Alright, welcome back. It's December 28th local time, the 28th day. Well, let's talk about a little few things since yesterday, I suppose. There was a very large patch today, and Pepe's comment, Pepe leaves a comment after every patch, right? on the official forum. And yeah, the PP standardization push is still going, and Pepe's like, meanwhile, here's a bunch of updates. And there were a lot. I don't actually know visually or pragmatically what 2/3 of those things were. So we'll see if we notice anything. So far we did notice one thing. All the main UI icons up here had a change. Almost all of them had a change. And they are far more explicit. And I absolutely love it. I'm pretty sure this icon wasn't green before either. The spacing is, I feel like the spacing is bigger too. Oh! And has a little bit of a triangle. Yeah, this was part of the patch notes that I kind of visualize. So if you look closely at the background when you guys are in OS laser, you can choose what type of like scrolling, like this pattern right here on the song select. I just leave it as triangle because it promotes a very contrasting look to all the curvy and softer edged stuff. So it's kind of a nice balance between sharp edges and curved edges. So you can see it up here. I don't know if that was there before. It's kind of hard to see. But this same pattern right here. What's up here? It was in a patch notes about somewhere on here. So that's kind of cool. There were a lot more tablet supports, right? A lot more tablet supports. Oh, well, now that's interesting. Okay, so the option menu comes out a lot further, and now there's words next to the icons, as opposed to just the icons. That's definitely new. I mean, this stuff is exciting to me. I understand that pragmatic players would be saying like, well, you know, how's my gameplay coming along, right? How's that stuff? That stuff is more important. Like, well, they're all important. You might be thinking, oh yeah, I'm being a drama queen, and I might be doing this thing where, like, that's not true and all that stuff, or it really does. That's generally the dialogue a lot of times. When you think about patching and quote-unquote fixing, like, patching over the years have become synonymous with fixing or anticipatory things, or things that are left undone. Right? It's not often from the perspective of adding things. Still, I mean, that is usually used with the C word, the content patches, as opposed to just patches in general, right? That's fair enough. Well, a lot of times, when you get things you don't ask for, I would say the vast majority of the newer generation of gamers would be more like, oh, this is not directed at Pepe at all, because Pepe has a very mutual and respectful relationship with their community. However, this doesn't really excuse the moral grandstanding that happens when you have a live service game, of which I do play too, and this is the much louder I don't know if it's the majority, but the much louder voice often is like along these lines. Say, hey, we fixed these problems that we were able to fix. That's how the patches communicate to me. However, what is often read by disgruntled individuals, loud disgruntled individuals, would be something like, oh, so you can fix this problem? What about the 8 billion other problems that are more important to them? The idea is that they are unhappy. That's fair enough. That's very unfortunate that you're playing a game that makes you unhappy, right? However, having things fixed is still having things fixed. Whether your problem is more important doesn't depict how difficult it may be or when it will be fixed, right? So, cue the horns about, I guess, being patient, or, of course, my go-to response would be take a break. Enjoy something else that doesn't make you unhappy for the time being. I understand that barrier in stepping away from something that potentially defined a big part of your life can be a little bit emotionally ambivalent, and that your concern, your violent emotional concern, is from a place of passion, right? Otherwise, you know, you wouldn't. It's illogical. Well, it wouldn't correlate very well for someone to go out of their way to be so passionately angry about fixing a game if they're not apathetic about the game, right? So, and I just love this in general. Like, Peppy is just, you know, instead of waiting for all these updates, he's like, you know what? Yeah, I know, guys. I have 3 days left. I have 3 days left to push the PP, like, standardization out before the official, you know, launch date, right? Of OS Laser's ranks. And say, well, you know what? Meanwhile, Merry Christmas, guys. And a Happy New Year. Here's some updates for you to just ruminate on. And for me, that's awesome. Like, hooray. I think it's a dream. To me, if you love a game and the developer loves the game in this way, and you share a mutual respect and patience between the creator and the person consuming it, right? It's a dream come true. Like, this is a match made in heaven, right? Like, just warm, fuzzy feelings all around. Finally, 2023 is almost over. I'm sorry to hear that it sounds like 2023 didn't treat you very well, Kingsley. By the word finally. Yeah, 2023 is almost over. That's certainly true. Yeah, so let's find out if we notice anything else that's different. Because the patch notes was really long. Unfortunately, I do not explore enough of OS to actually know what over half the patch notes actually mean from a pragmatic standpoint. It's awesome. I mean, I already notice a couple difference, and it's some of my favorite stuff. Oh, and there's a new mod here. 2023, nothing happened that you found noteworthy, huh? 2023, certainly a lot has happened, but I'm sorry to hear that your year was feeling insignificant. Oh, depth. Here it is. 3D? Almost 3D. You know what? Let's quickly look at this. Let's just see what it looks like. I want to know. Oh no. 3D. OS 3D. Don't let all the OS people know. Definitely do not let anyone, any of the 2D gang know. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Oh, snap. Wait, I love this. Yo, I absolutely love this. We're gonna have to play OS like this. It might start today. Oh, we gotta do this. This is good. Alright. Oh, wait. It doesn't let me do, hold up. Is it compatible with this? Oh yeah, it is. Alright. 3D. I just listed under this. I love patches. What can I say? I'm a dynamic person. Okay. But before we go, let's wrap up some thoughts. I want to share a story because it has been a very common routine. From now on, I think my general routine now is if I'm playing any of my live service games, so currently that's OS, Neverwinter, and PSO NGS, I'll bring a story each day, for however long we're doing the grind series, right? So today's story, so there's this influencer who is also a game developer, and the person's incredibly charismatic. Like, I really found the person, he's like we're not gonna name drop this time around, because I don't have a very strong social relationship with this person, so I don't know enough to be confident to say these things. However, the stuff that has been fed to me by YouTube algorithm, because YouTube algorithm understands my selection, I let YouTube track most of my activities, land me on some of this person's content where there are a lot of hot takes, right? The hot takes are largely short format versions of their long format versions, so I haven't had the time to go and look at their long format stuff. So in these ones, he has messages that are very similar to me. However, this person comes from a different educational and professional background than I do. So our takes are contextually different. However, the core element and foundation of the messages are very similar. Like, you have your taking breaks, motivational speaking, self-motivational speaking about doing things and, you know, combating nihilism, that type. Not in those particular words, but those are the words I prefer to use. While that is happening, I think I had this established link for maybe a month now. I've been looking on and off about trying to grasp who this person is, right? Through the frame that they have. And they make games. So there's a game they're actively developing in early access. So I wanted to see how the profile pics and like the storefront on Steam looks like. You know, the early access games do have review sections, and then a review section is a reflection of this person's product. And this person happens to be an influencer and an active game developer. So that's something remarkably different from a developer engaging in content creation as a result of their game development. This person struck me as a person who has had that in mind before the game development stage in his life, and he was a professional background in a different thing. that does still tangentially relate to game development. So I was looking at the reviews, and I spot a couple of, in my opinion, concerning patterns to me, but probably not to this person or the community. While I was on a run, I ruminated about some of these things. So I don't know where my future is going to be, right? I am sending messages that are at the core very similar to this person. However, I come from an educational background, a background that deals with exchange of ideas, not the promotion of specific principles. So the coexistence of a lot of contrasting, maybe conflicts of interest, are a natural, healthy environment for people to develop and integrate greater forms of products, services, creativity. And this person, while they're promoting and observing their own ideas, they're very great ideas. The community is using it as a weapon. So it's not the intent of this person. It really, really far off. I don't think this person intends that. But that's the thing that I observe a lot of times, right? When you become a public figure and an influencer, you don't necessarily, a lot of the individuals don't necessarily keep in mind that their projection of their principles and stuff, however encouraging and with the kindest intent, can bolster just as passionate community followers, right? And that passion can end up weaponizing the person's goodwill and intent against others. And that's kind of what is the really touchy part about being a public figure. And that's kind of what I worry about in the future if I ever try to resonate with a larger audience, right? I like to start here though. So what is this thing that I noticed that caused this little digression here? We'll turn it into a digression. Yeah, before I start for the day. I'm already 18 minutes in. So what I saw was, so this guy is incredibly charismatic, and he offers a lot of words of wisdom of the current trend in things, and how he potentially disagrees with them, right? And overall, his messages and his promotions are incredibly encouraging. Actually, a lot of times, the words of wisdom deal with the words of wisdom that are open-ended. So, for example, yeah, you know, if you like video games, go out and make video games. Make mistakes. If someone doesn't like your video game, ask them what's wrong with the game, and then take it and make it better, right? That kind of stuff is an open-ended, one-sided form of positivity. So generally, those things are not the ones that are being weaponized. The other form of the media that he tries to raise awareness of are dealing with like economic models or like business models in the gaming industry. And I do talk about this from a non-professional standpoint. Like, I don't actually have any relations to how business models work, and like literally, so I don't have connections or anything like that. And from the outside, most of his arguments are and presentation are incredibly cogent. I really like his ideas. However, there is generally commonly a risk involved. And that risk, to me, I don't think is this particular person's focus or specialty, which is the idea of disseminating information and projecting one's principles while also spending time measuring or keeping track of how that influence and information is being utilized by your community. And this person has a huge community, so it's very understandable for one person to not be able to keep track of this. And what I'm saying is probably the minority, right? So I was looking at these reviews about this person's game who's in early access, and I will definitely be playing it at some point. I love the whole idea of this person using their skills and using a platform to demonstrate the building process, development process in real time. If there's anyone that's a fan of constantly showing or trying to capture the entire process, the learning process and the development process of a skill, I'm there, right? If I have the time, I will most definitely watch someone do the whole thing, as opposed to that hot take where here's the finished product, this is where I started, and assume everything else, right? Or everything else in between. So what is this type of remark? Well, there's a lot of disagreements, right? Conflicts of interest in the current trend of how video games are marketed, or what the maybe questionable or disagreeable motivations of how games are monetized. And yes, I can definitely understand the conflicts of interest. Monetization in any form, be it food, education, medicine. Monetization is a limited, I'm gonna say a human constructed limited resource. And this resource is ultimately, in reality, unequitable, like non-equitable, or like it's incredibly difficult to become normalized, distributed, right? Like easily accessible universally kind of thing. So because of that nature, recognizing that as part of the human condition may ground some of my concerns about this. So this person admirably, through their platform and their motivations, they want to illustrate that there are greater considerations, and really wonderfully so, to monetize their products, as in the products they make, the game they make, in order to become more accessible to other people, like differently. And I love the granularity in this person's perspective. Like, for example, I'll use an example from my perspective, or involving a skill that I typically use, and that is the skill of communication. Oftentimes the internet has normalized the way, again, the internet hustle culture has normalized the way that there is a one-size-fits-all, a optimal approach to many things. And we'll get back to that because it applies to the weaponizing of this person's goodwill against others in the same industry. Not them specifically, the community that they project and foster. So a great example of this, like, granularity in using the skill, like for example communication. Oftentimes in the hustle culture of the internet, many skills that are incredibly in-depth and also possibly mandatory in life offer zero granularity. Generally, it's what's the best way to do things, what's the non-dynamic, static, optimal way, and consistently, like, statistically significant approaches to communication. Well, as someone who feels like they have some nuance in communication, I don't talk to everyone the same way. Like on the internet, you can probably have a rudimentary checklist of ways that you would approach conversation in order to lead to a standardized average outcome. Like, hey, remember that you have to do X, Y, and Z to consistently at least get 50% success rate, or whatever the target success rate is in your communication. The moment you start delving into the specialty of any skill, in this case communication, you will be able to appreciate the granularity of that skill, and ultimately the difference between someone who has an average command of communication and a person like myself. I would say, humbly as I can, I don't talk to people the same way. I talk to them the most appropriate way. And that is a way to demonstrate that I have flexibility and refinement in communication. So, for example, if someone loves OS, I wouldn't talk to them like I play Fortnite. Right? And if I don't play OS, I still wouldn't talk to them like I play Fortnite. However, the internet hustle culture would normalize a different type of behavior. They typically normalize what is important to yourself, and that you can project your principles openly regardless of the conditions. Like, there's no room for empathy if you're always being hustled into how to successfully express yourself, and that's all that matters. I understand that that's a great starting point for communication, not for other things, but for communication, that is a great starting point. And I actually encourage people who are already struggling with self-expression to start there, right? As long as you are able to create a foundation of self-expression, you are able to at least communicate your thoughts and feelings appropriately, and then maybe organically lead to a resolution in any conflicts of interest or miscommunications, right? But ultimately, I use the word but too often, and ultimately, this natural organic problem solving that occurs from self-expression, appropriate self-expression, will lead to the development of the skill that I'm referring to now. You get granularity in your communication skills. So not only do your self-expression become normalized and refined, then that no longer becomes a taxing part of practice. Beyond that is how to adapt your communication style to the person you're talking to. So when you think of it this way, I feel the person, now we're going to take it back to how this inspired all of this. This person's communication is trying to greatly make some of the life lessons they have, especially specific industry stuff they observe, into a very easily understood but complex relationship. Like complex, they're trying to describe something that occurs really, really complex. However, the easy understanding is being communicated as a simple understanding sometimes, and not intentionally or something like that. Like I don't think I get that impression. So how do I demonstrate what I'm saying? So, for example, what they are doing is a fantastic model in the way games could be monetized, and has been monetized because they have the power to do so. Monetized in order to bring greater accessibility to different regions and players. Like one of the central pieces that inspired this was the comment that their game, they normalized the weight of their costs of their game to the principle of the psychological motivations behind piracy and accessibility and resources across the globe. So it is a great thought experiment. Like, it's a thought experiment that's being executed now. So for example, places that don't have a lot of proportional expendable income to invest in gaming, that was normalized, it was weighted, and it was an executive decision made by this person because they control how the game is distributed, right? And it's incredible. It works so well. Now, while this person is demonstrating this goodwill and foresight and understanding the dynamics of like how to monetize games globally, the comments section, the people that follow this passionate thought experiment, like this person, has weaponized it. So while you have very passionate people who believe in your words, there's usually not a counter argument or a balance to suggesting why the other models exist. So while this person is going about their wonderful content creation and showing a different perspective, that perspective is exclusively to that. So what happens is this person becomes incredibly popular. However, at the same time, they also end up unintentionally generating fanatics. And those fanatics, in my opinion, are going through a psychological use of their content in the same way that placed the system that this person disagrees with into power. So what I mean by that is, what are the psychological and social structures that support like games that are $70 now and games that have $110 price tags for pre-order specials and whatnot? The irony here is that very person who is championing this influencer's product is weaponizing this influencer's product and words in order to do the very same thing. This is the right way to do things, and I want everyone to know that. So these collective people are growing, right, within this, maybe under this person's vision or not vision. They are using his words to empower themselves to take the moral high ground, the morally grandstanding. So they are vilifying all existing and competing business models, as in, sometimes I misuse this word. By vilify, I mean they're painting everything this person is doing as a extremist protest to everything else that exists. Everything else is disgusting. It is repulsive. It shouldn't exist. So that is the impression I'm getting. In no way are these fanatics who really love this guy's like content and message and stuff, in no way did this guy give me the impression that he wants a crusade and like a pitchforks against a system that is well established. In my opinion, I believe someone as professional and charismatic as this person would like the idea that they are making an example. They are trying to produce a product with things they believe in to demonstrate that it can work, instead of trying to tear down other people's products and business models. He's competing with them. He is actively and successfully, in my opinion, quite successfully and influentially competing with them. However, since he's such a big platform now and he's wonderful, like I really like the guy. It feels like I could just sit down and talk to him about all his different thought experiments that he's going to go move forward in trying to reshape how monetization works, right? in the gaming industry. This is one of his big topics. It does concern me that you have to remember, or like, it's very encouraging to keep in mind that when you become a public figure, regardless if you intend it or not, your projections are going to be accountable. You're going to be held accountable for spawning fanatics and extremists that use your name and your credibility as a rationale for moral grandstanding and destroying other people's livelihoods in the process. So, or potentially harming other people. And I understand that if you're appealing to millions of people all the time and whatnot, it can be very difficult. And regardless of how your honorable intents are, fanaticism and extremists often comes from a place where you're projecting benevolence and really strongly communicating through emotions, right? We're not talking about cultivating a community filled with intellectuals that are constantly in conflicts of interest. Like, for example, the scientific peer review system, right? Oftentimes, it's more of an attempt to challenge each other. That's the status quo. In this case, when you become an influencer and you have a message that is incredibly positive, but also drawing contrast with an existing system, it is very common to spawn a subculture within your community, your own community, that will take extremist protesting that can reflect upon you as a public figure. And in this case, a lot of the reviews I read are incredibly passionate. They're incredibly with good intentions, right? Like, there's what they say is like, I didn't buy this game to play it. I didn't buy this game on sale because this person has made it clear. They always they set the prices, and then the prices are a reflection of how accessible it is. And then there's a lot of champion, I bought 5 copies of this just so that I can support this guy's message. And so on, that other corporations, other companies, other developers and publishers are evil. They are incredibly rotten, greedy, and that's what I read over and over again. It's actually one of the loudest ones. And then what happens on the Steam platform is that it gets higher transparency, it gets higher impressions, because it's appealing to mob mentality. It is appealing to the internet hustle culture. What is right and what is wrong to do. And in my opinion, whatever this person's intent is as an influencer and a game developer, I respect that and their community and what they're trying to do. However, for myself, when I was running, it was one of my greatest fears. While I continue to do these things, and it's going to happen in the future, right? It's going to happen where someone may become... I generally try to advise independent thought, try to encourage independent thought that invites natural and organic disagreement to what I present. At some point, though, there will be individuals who have a foundational start, and it could be me, I don't know. I just want to encourage those people to become independent. Fanaticism and passionate white knighting and crusading often comes from a place that is entirely emotional. And I like to encourage people to be both intellectually and emotionally intelligent at the same time. Because without independent thought, there's codependency. So codependency can become a driver for blind faith. And that blind faith can create a martyr out of me or anything I say. and it can create a martyr out of those people. And that martyr fuels destructive passion. Destructive passion that can lead to literal wars and figurative wars between existing models. And some of the things that I have often worried about when you become a public figure, which obviously I have to think about all the time if I really want to be able to do this on a bigger stage. Oftentimes when I'm in academia, it's already pre-selected, right? When I'm at the university, the people who I interact with go through a pre-selection process, and that pre-selection did all the work, right? I talked about the game ranking system or rating system often in OS because it involves the same type of psychology, the pre-selection. Like, people pre-select them into the gaming rating system. So for me, I have been increasingly worried about how am I going to manage some of the messages that I may or may not intend to give if people are forming codependent relationships with me, like, you know, like parasocial relationships. The idea is that I have to keep in mind that I must stay vigilant on encouraging anyone, you know, the random stranger or someone who finds maybe myself charismatic, that one day they can be charismatic and also independent. The moment dependency becomes so strong, it might start creating this warped reality that I believe in this person's message, so I can use this person's message to burn all their opponents down to the ground. And it's going to be a place of love. It's going to be a place of affection and benevolence and morally correct actions. However, that's what causes wars, like figurative wars, intellectual wars between people. And I would like to think, just to end on a more encouraging note, I like the idea that someone like this person, who is incredibly charismatic, you have to envision that outside of the things this person promotes, they are incredibly professional and intelligent, and they can sit down and occupy the same table probably with a counter person who operates in a different system and negotiate and compromise and talk about what works and what doesn't work. Meanwhile, the ones that are writing these reviews on his behalf can give a really false impression to someone like myself of what this person's presenting. Fortunately, in my case, I've become familiar with the person, right, behind this system, before seeing what his fans, or like the loud fans, really say. Because right now, if I were a person who go onto this person's game and look at the reviews, I see propaganda. Like, it's very difficult. The loudest post is propaganda. And that is the very nature that established the things this person disagree with. And I don't necessarily think that is the vision of this really kind, hardworking, charismatic person. Like, giving the impression that this person is on a crusade of taking down all the business models, like all the other game developers and publishers, I don't think that's the message that this person's giving. Unfortunately, being a public figure doesn't mean you can always control or help or be vigilant enough to spread fanaticism. And you just read these things like, oh yeah, you know, I'm doing all this, I believe in this guy, he's really great, down with corporations. Or down with Blizzard. Down with live service models. Well, if you tear them down and you antagonize them That's not a way of learning. In my opinion, it's not a compromise. It's not a learning experience. It's not coexistence or a better product. In fact, I would probably argue that communication between the two models will build a bigger and more inclusive model. The passionate and probably very kind messages that they are attempting to do is putting the opponents down at the same time. So, in my opinion, I hope that one day, if I ever revisit my videos and people get the impression that if people like the way I say things or leave an impression on their lives and help them, I don't know, ethically or morally justify certain things, I like to believe that I'm also encouraging them to have an open mind enough to be accepting to compromise and learn from people who they disagree with as well. It is through the collaboration of people that creates intelligence, create emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence. It's not through the actions of which both parties are guilty, as in not that person himself, but the reviews, the people that are projecting maybe his intent or attempting to, where the path to their successful future is to burn down their opponents in the process. So like, if my intent of doing this and raising awareness of the game rating system is by no means telling Peppy that he needs to change the rating system. That is not the intent. I'm suggesting that I'm raising awareness what the game rating system does and enabling people to take into account what works for them. Raising awareness is not a platform to execute extremist crusades against what it doesn't do. So oftentimes in the internet hustle culture, influencers will tell you what is the best way, what is the most morally acceptable way to them. It's not suggesting, in my opinion, keeping a grounded, a bigger perspective, it's not suggesting what they don't mention is bad, is evil, is repulsive, it's vilified, right? However, even disagreements doesn't mean that the whole thing is disagreeable. There are ways to compromise. So when I make mention, I have to mention this because I think the last 28 days of OS, there are messages that I said that are largely promoting awareness. I don't want to give the impression that it is bad or good, or is morally just or morally not. The idea is to raise awareness so that everyone involved, the developers, their opponents, the publishers, all the different types of gamers that are in OS or different types of OS players are able to openly express and know more about what is happening. And then to use that information to extract a better living and sustainable habits. I like to believe that I'm not here to enable people to crucify and go on a mission to carry the right way of doing things. I really hope that's not the case. And the reason why I'm saying this is it's the one thing that would probably make me stop wanting to be a public figure. If I lose control of the things I say and it's enabling them to hurt other people, whether intentionally or not, I would probably say that I would stop doing it. For me, personally, this is not a reflection of whoever else, but I really hope that my projection, right, the things that I'm projecting, I really like to have this naive idea that when I'm investing forward in another person, that person has only the independence and self-awareness enough to invest forward in other people, not destroy other people so that they can be more efficient. So when you go around and say, hey, you know, MAKU said that you should really not play PP because PP will make you a narrow-minded person and only focus on performances that you didn't practice these skills, so this is the right way to do things. I really hope that doesn't come to pass. The idea is you see someone, right? I like to believe that with time and exposure, I enable people to see what is appropriate to help someone, not what to do to everyone. So like, I'm not giving life hacks about this is the right way, so when you go to someone, that's the only way you're going to do it. I like to believe that we're taking time to critically evaluate and problem solve, and the act of doing that normalizes open thinking. As in, you see someone, let's say you see a game, right? And it's too expensive for you. It's $50. You are able to, this individual or the people that I might unintentionally influence or intentionally influence will see that, okay, so what can I do instead? Or how important is this thing? And what are my alternatives? And then act appropriately for that while offering criticisms of whether this game is appropriately priced or overpriced or what have you. The idea is to be able to evaluate with discernible and appropriate decision making and critical thinking, not blinded faith and passion, because if you're justifiably right, which I'm gonna tell you now, for those, including myself in the future, in case I lose sight of this, is that there is always something more morally justifiable. And I don't like that. It's one-sided. I don't like one-sided things, in my opinion. So, for example, what is the most morally justifiable price for video games from an end-user perspective? Free. What's more than free? You're getting paid to play the game. It just keeps going. Like, the bottom, it's endless. The top is endless. So when someone is trying to offer a very realistic, sustainable take, a professional who is a game designer, who is a developer, who also acts as a publisher, is presenting a model that he himself is also making money and sustaining companies. It's a different model. And presenting this model can create others to adopt that model or even build upon it. Meanwhile, while you're projecting this model, it doesn't necessarily offer you the moral grandstanding justification to tear down other people's models and approaches. The idea is to take their model and work and improve upon it. That's exactly his message most of the time. He sees a problem that he thinks he can change. Without the existence of that model, his model might not exist. So competition and understanding and awareness of competition often breeds innovation and improvements. Without a rating system, I would not be able to make these observations in the first place. So in no way am I suggesting to tear down the PP system and revamp the PP system. What you can gather and extract from the PP system offers a learning lesson in which you yourself, as a creator, an independent human being, can become less dependent on the rating system and build something even greater. What happens then? Epi could integrate and be inspired off the community to add more ideas to it, right? It's not about 1 and zeros. It's about 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 and more. In fact, sometimes it's like 1 times 2, right? Or like bigger than the sum of its parts. So when people go around and say like, yeah, everyone should be doing it this way, you've just created the whole problem in the first place. So you have these passionate people that says, yeah, you know, vilifying all the companies, like that they don't deserve to do this. They're completely greedy. Tear down that system. That's exactly how they behave to create that system in the first place. So those individuals, while being incredibly passionately motivated by their moral grandstanding, they are behaving in the same way that established a lack of choice. You fight choice with choice and demonstrate that it is proficiently better. That person you believe in isn't making a game that you like but can't afford because of the thing that you say is corrupted. If you hope that your champion also develops the games that you want and also support that system. Burning down the system that's providing that game means that you rob everyone else who are in that system and also prefers to use that system to gain access to those games. So you not only destroy creativity, you also destroy the livelihoods of other people, acting exactly like the thing you claim you're not acting like. Putting your money where your mouth is exactly the thing that creates monopolized, justifiable behavior. So, in my opinion, the deep cut here is, I like to believe that this world is big enough for healthy, mutually respectful competition. This is romantic, it's idealistic, and it's naive. However, the closest thing that I had in my life professionally that resembles what I'm describing is the scientific community. And even the scientific community continues to struggle with like monopolization, ethics, moral grandstanding, like all that stuff, right? It's a human condition. We struggle with that all the time, and balancing that. Burning your competition down doesn't make you a better person. I'm just saying, like, it removes a learning experience. If you have competitors, you know what you desire to do and what you don't desire to do. You make products because you have competitors. So going around championing like you understand someone's professionalism by burning their competitors in order to raise the status of that creator. If that creator is a professional, I doubt that is the thing they desire. It not only breeds more problems for them, it may put them in the crosshair and hurt their reputation. So ironically, while you're going out making extremist claims and really fanatically supporting someone you might become codependent on, you're also constantly adding to the risk to this person's reputation and career. And the idea here is that not everyone is a public speaker. Not every influencer is professionally trained or have like the foresight of mitigating these things. Not everyone's a politician, right? For example. So it is up to a mutual understanding and exchange and empathy, care and empathy between a community and their creator, like Peppy and the OS community, to understand that it's a give and take, an exchange, but generally extreme actions must also take into account the extreme consequences. When you go around vilifying big corporations, that creates trouble for the person you possibly love in a parasocial relationship. And as a professional, because I like to believe most people will become professionals in the future, or are already professionals, they're individuals who can sit in a room with their opponents and hash out a compromise, hash out different types of changes, and talk about reform in a manner that is mutually respectful to each other, instead of going to war, both intellectually and physically. So I really like this person, and therefore that's why it inspired this. I echo the influencers that I do have a parasocial relationship with, and they do the same. Every once in a while, you know, like I'm gonna plug John Green one last time, because I plugged him yesterday as well. His passion for tuberculosis, right? Not like the passion of what tuberculosis is doing to the population, but the cure for tuberculosis. So recently, he struck a really wonderful but also ambivalent things. Let's describe this, and this is why I'm so concerned, right? And I'm concerned every day when I start doing more and more digressions. John Green used his influence to raise awareness of tuberculosis, because tuberculosis in the developed countries are pretty much non-existent because the cure is easily accessible. He used that to raise awareness that this cure is incredibly inaccessible because of cost. This sounds like the video game situation, right? It's just a contextual difference, not a fundamental difference. So, using his influence, he was able to indirectly or directly enter a conversation with one of the major corporations that distribute and manufactures these cures for tuberculosis. And TB, we'll just use the abbreviation TB from now on. TB, then he was able to convince, or indirectly convince, or through the culmination of his community and himself, was able to convince that to give these cures, increase the accessibility of these cures in developing countries. Developed countries don't typically require this because they have easy access to it, or it's more accessible, right? So that was a great victory to them, to him and his community. And then obviously it's presented as a compromise or a win-win for the corporation. Like, it was provocative enough in which it raises, they must have negotiated some way of both parties mutually existing as beneficiaries for this type of action, right? Maybe it's good PR for the company that raises their influence and improves their investors, etc. It ultimately resulted in millions of cures being distributed and accessible to developing countries for TB. That sounds amazing. It's an incredible story. John Green then he gave me the impression that he spent a week spiraling in what just happened. And I don't know necessarily the full picture of it, but he did talk about it afterwards, where, yeah, it sounds like he should feel great about this. And as someone who watches him through a lens, right? Watches him, that's a great moral victory. It's a great, everything. There will be millions of people who are going to be cured, who's going to outlive TB, right? Like TB is not going to claim their lives. That's incredible. That's also filled with so much ambivalence. And John, in a following vlog, after he like had to take a break with, I imagine, his mania that occurred, it's so scary, in my opinion. The thing he communicated was, yeah, he should feel happy, but then he started thinking about, what if, like, what does this do? Like, what happens now? Like, did he do, quote unquote, the right thing, or what are the consequences of all these actions? Because he commands millions of people. Like, for better or for worse, or for like intended or unintended, he has a great power and influence, and he should be happy about these things. But then there's everything else. And when he was talking about, he had a vlog, right? He used his vlog platform to communicate his insecurities and his ambivalence with what transpired. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I didn't mention what specifically, contextually. If you're curious, it's definitely on their channel, Vlogbrothers. It's why it happened. All the things that is unspoken. And that's kind of what I'm scared about. Like, if I had a fear, granted, I don't think I'm necessarily as crippled, not like more mentally fatigued and exhausted as John is, because I'm not in his position. I'm not a person who commands millions of influence. In fact, some part of me is probably self-sabotaging myself from becoming a person in that position, because he is suffering from mania all the time by how incredibly scary what just happened. Like, he could just express his interest and he might be able to change millions of people's lives, whether intentionally or not. That's, for someone that I resonate with, like, it might not be the same for the developer guy, the gamer guy, right, the game developer guy, but for me, I wake up every day wondering what the consequences of my voice is, right? My perspective is, even if I am doing something I feel is morally just, perhaps, I haven't really done anything like that before, or trying to encourage goodwill, the bigger the platform becomes, the greater weight a single person has, or body of entity, the scarier it is, at least to me. And I feel that's one thing that I could probably sit down with John and talk about, probably drive each other into mania because of it. It's so scary that if I, try to resonate with John, being able to do that is the scariest thing that could possibly happen. Like, yeah, you did a good... I would tell myself, like, yeah, I did a good thing. Perhaps. It doesn't help spending 99.9% of the time wondering, what else did I do? What happened? What did I set in motion? Like, all that stuff. And that's what he expressed. He expressed it in a great way, though. I will highlight a little bit of his what that video had. So, in the end, the really wholesome message is that he refocused and channeled that ambivalence to starting like a campaign, or like a like a charity thing, a funding thing, where ultimately through all of this like concern about what he's setting in motion, his community was able to help and donate and fund something else, something really great. I think it might have been cancer related. I don't remember the specifics because I was so preoccupied by the message that resonated with me. And his silver lining is that, well, you know, he might not feel the best, and he's always constantly worried about who did like his actions, you know, the grand scheme of his actions. However, he is able to sober up and be encouraged to continue doing what he does through the benevolence of his community. So while he continues to battle his struggles with all the potential unintended effects of his influence and power, they were able to raise a lot of money for a good cause in the process. And his ending message was, you know, while all these things can be a constant life struggle, at least he's being reminded that other people and the community, the wonderful people in his community, are able to still strive to at least do good things, right? Or what they believe to be good things. So before I go and end this digression and do this practice for today, I'm not suggesting that in combating fanaticism with fanaticism. So I'm just raising awareness, right? The idea is these comments, these passionate people, I really do sincerely hope that upon reflection, they realize that they can realize that if you're passionate about something, expressing passionism in a deleterious and destructive way may inevitably, possibly harm the person they were trying to support in the first place. So it's not about burning that person down or burning those fanatics. It's about raising those awareness in order to allow a place to appropriately express great passion, but at the same time not necessarily making it so easy or inconsiderate to burn bridges as well. Like all of the stuff in human society is interconnected, and it leads to people like John, and I would say myself, concerned and worried about all the ripple and uncontrollable effects of what we say in public. And in my opinion, the ones that struggle with that are the ones that are more likely to quit before they are ahead. And John talk about these things, and he's one of the few that talk about the mania that spirals from it. And that's kind of how I find that he and his brother and maybe a few others are the rare people that I resonate with. Like, that type of fear is ever consuming. Like, just to give one last example of these things, I don't have to influence millions of people. When I have a friend, right, that I met online, and I'm offering advice and trying to encourage them, I go to bed at night wondering what are the potential ripples and effects of that. Someone could just come up to me and say like, oh no, but you know, you had the best intentions in mind. It's like, that doesn't stop me from wondering and fearful or like concerned about it. It's exhausting, but it also keeps me going, right? And if it's one person, I feel like I can manage it, right? Maybe 10, maybe 100. Where's the cutoff? I have no idea right now. And so far, I would say I'm in the 10s. And I go to bed at night. I wonder and concern about all the things I've said today. Every day I wake up, I review, I think about all the things I've said previously. Like, for example, today I wanted to say that I used the word vilified in the wrong context yesterday. However, it kind of works out if you think about it. I'll let whoever's interested pick up on that. And today I have actually used it in the correct context that I intended. So things like that, just every little thing starts weighing. So if you ever want to know how it feels to be an incredibly intellectually inclined person, it comes with baggage. It comes with a lot of other things. I wouldn't change it though. I don't want to give people the impression that I'm suffering or it's not sustainable. It's still sustainable now. When it becomes unsustainable, I will most certainly make it apparent, right? I generally encourage people to understand how to express that, be aware of that, and know when to walk away and not to walk away. So it was incredibly courageous, and it resonated with me really well that that moment when John had to take a week away to collect from his anxiety, all his incredibly rampant emotions, after what most people would struck as a big victory for the morally good, right? And I don't think many people who are out for themselves, who primarily haven't crossed the bridge of self-awareness where it involves other people, have really considered that. And that includes a lot of professionals who are very encouraging about, like, yeah, go out, make mistakes for yourself, make the games you want to make, take feedback and then make it better, that kind of thing. The next step beyond that is figuring out what all your effects of the things you say, and that is taxing. It's kind of my rationale for why I'm not meant to be a politician. Like, a lot of people think about politicians as politicians. They don't think of them as leaders and public figures. Well, now think about what I just described, and that's your living. Like, being a politician is legitimately living the nightmare for me, personally. Not, I don't know about what politicians feel because they are politicians, right? They've negotiated a way to do that professionally. I cannot do that. Like, I can't even imagine right now what it's like. I can only have a semblance of how John feels. But it resonated with me so much. And I don't even know, I mean, based on the comments from the community, it's more like, feel good, you know? Like, I hope you get better. You did a great thing. One thing that I say a lot of times, and people will find me saying this really often, is that, yeah, you know, maybe not a lot of people think what you say is necessary, or like, people don't get you, like, you think too deep, quote unquote, too deep about things, and that's perfectly fine. It just tells me that they are more likely to have a higher threshold or a greater filter for these things. I think the reason why I talk about these things at these lengths is also, that's the trade-off. Like, at night I go to bed and I think about, what are the consequences of my words, right? Because I'm obviously doing this publicly now. And in order for me to actually have things to talk about and have things people resonate with, what comes with that is also the concerns and exhaustion that comes with worrying about other things. So it's not, you can't necessarily separate them. And you can't, and take it all the way back to the beginning of this digression about this particularly charismatic individual. They're all connected. So the way that he resonates with the millions of people, the way he approached gaming and monetization and encouraging other people, all of that also comes with fanatics, martyrs, crusades, white knights. So I like to think that there's some sustainable balance for this person. I can't possibly agree with that, the actions of a fanatic. However, I can accept that it's, and be aware that it occurs. So my final like wrap up for this digression is hopefully that in the long run, I continue to be someone who encourages people to be open-minded and level-headed. Much like how John and Hank continues to promote and remind their communities that great things can happen without the necessity to be hateful and malicious and vilifying your opponents. The greatest victory is when you have a victory for, I'm gonna say all, ideally, but a victory for most. Not a victory for one side. It's a pleasant ending spot. So there you go. I didn't realize I was just gonna start with a digression for the day. But, you know, sometimes 2023, it's the end of the year. You might as well go out with a big message. Anyways,